Hello everyone, welcome back. It's UnkleDestiny here with you. And as many of us are doing this, as we reach this time of the year, we are doing the readings for the new year. So, 2022. This reading is generally going to talk about what the energy of the overall year is going to be like. It's not going to necessarily say what a specific month or a specific incident is going to be, but it will be speaking to what the overall energy of the year is and what that focus means for what we're going to be dealing with. What is the aspects that we need to be looking at from a long-term perspective, not a short-term perspective. So let's go ahead and get the bones in here and thrown and see what they have to say. All right, so we've thrown the bones, and the first thing we get is the dice landed on the 6, which is the 6th house, which is health, fitness, organizations, and acts of service. So everything that we're going to be looking at in this next year is going to be centering around health, which is no big surprise considering the last 2 years of dealing with COVID. The fitness of how we're dealing with our health, and that health is not just our health of ourselves, the health of our families, the health of our societies, the health of our world, and the organizations that are working both for and against it, and how we can be in an act of service. Now, in addition to what we've got in the bones, we also have the Adinkra. And in this case, we ended up getting 2 cards. And one is the Ladder of Death, which will be climbed by all beings. All men shall climb the ladder of death. The other, which is also very poignantly connected to this one, is the snake climbing the raffia palm, doing an unusual feat. This is ingenuity, excellence, a feat of performance, the ability to do good feats, performing the unusual or the impossible. So how does this connect with the ladder of death? Well, both of these things involve the act of climbing, moving from one level to another, especially in the idea of a palm, which is a palm tree, which we've all seen pictures of. So imagine a snake climbing that, being able to move its way across such a irregular surface that it is able to get into the palm tree. So this act of what we're looking at with the aspect of health, fitness, organizations, and acts of service, we must focus in this year about doing acts of service that are fulfilling both the health and fitness of our society, of our families, and of ourselves, which also may result in the deaths of organizations, which may result in the deaths of cultures. It can easily also result in the deaths of family and elements of self. So letting that sink in there for a moment, that fundamentally in 2022, there is an element of death, and that is not going away, that everyone must deal with, whether it is the death of self, whether it is death of loved ones, whether it is death of culture and organizations. That is going to be present. And again, how do we do that? How do we interact with it? And so when we come to the bones themselves, we've got an interesting sort of distribution here. As you can see, our main bones are kind of distributed out. And this one here, this one is social. This one is home, and that one is work. So I'll start quickly over here with the work bone, which you'll see is also next to a rib bone and near one of the spinal bones. And that is dealing that there's going to be inspiration in our sense of work that comes in this next year. It is going to be towards the edge, so I don't see it happening immediately at the start of the year, but it is going to be showing up throughout the year. So it might be more towards the midsummer or more towards the fall. But this is in the distance, and this is going to have an effect on our sense of work. And our reminder, our work is more than just what we do to pay the bills. This is about that the work that we do to be in the world. And that connects with our act of service. What is our act of service to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, and to the world itself? So there is inspiration and there is balance that is coming in there. The home bone is balanced, is pretty much flat arrow, it's on the horizon. So there is stuff that is on the horizon in that regard. And we also, again, have also a rib bone and a spinal bone. So there's about balance and there's inspiration. But it is so much on the horizon. This is something that's probably not going to show up until fall or the start of winter of 2022. So figure around November and December. But there's going to be changes around the home there. But there's also inspiration. Now the greater area is the one here, connected with the social bone. And this is where we got the greatest collection of everything, from the copper to the quartz to the shell to the spinal, as well as the broken rib bone. And in fact, we even have the other broken portion of the rib bone over here forming the crutch. So when this one looking at our social world, our social connections, which is our family and our social world itself, all of these things are at play. All of them are connected in with the choices that we're making. Spirit is very much involved in this energy because it can be very much part of how we are deciding not just what happens in 2022, but in the future that comes after that. And again, this is about the long view. Not just the immediate view, the long view. And I'm going to stress the long view even more so. So Spirit is looking at what's going to be the long view. And how are you doing that in that choices about your acts of health and your act of fitness and your act of organization, your acts of service, so that you must and we have to do the impossible. And when we do the impossible, we allow something to die. And we allow something to change, which is necessary. There is a change that must happen. And it's happening on our social fronts. And there's so much of what has brought us here that cannot keep going. It is dying. But in its death throes, it is creating so much chaos and so much destruction and so much hurt feelings. And that's part of what we get with the quartz crystal here. We have allowed memories to get clouded, and it must remain clear. And that comes with the ideas that there is some great time that existed in the past, and that was only for a small number of people, not for the greater good of just the community, but the entire world. And we have to keep that in mind, that the choices that we're making now are also about ensuring that we are not getting lost in a small segment of people. And a small segment of the world is what they think is theirs. As these last several years, I mean, frankly, we're going on 7, have shown us, many more people are beginning to understand and see narcissism around them. And that narcissism is part of this death throes that we're seeing. The idea that they have to hold on at the cost of everybody else. And that's what we must be prepared to deal with. And that is part of what must die. We cannot continue to let that type of thinking, those types of people, have the power they do. And that comes by actually looking through with a clear crystal at what's going on. What have been the outcomes? Not the short-term outcomes, but the long-term outcomes. And this is something that has to affect us internally. We have to internally look at these things and be aware of what the long-term effect has been. And there's greater balance and there's greater structure on that. The other fact I want to point out is that the rib bone is not, the broken one is not focused inward, it's focused outward. And why that's important is that, again, this inner issues that people are having, the inner nature of someone who's dealing with narcissism, is not really truly about the people outside. It's about themselves. It's about what they are afraid to face. And they do that by projecting it outward. And there is the fact that the point is pointing outward, as opposed to it needs to be about dealing with what they are doing inside. So in this next year, 2022, we need to be looking at the overall health of who are we picking to be our leaders? Who are we picking to be those that are holding the responsibility, whether they want to or not, for the tasks that are before us? Are they looking to climb the ladder to change the world for the better? Are they willing to climb the ladder and do the impossible? Because it is the impossible that is needed. Not the same thing, not the comfortable thing, the impossible thing. So, when time comes for you, when you're confronted with choices, especially some of the difficult choices, can you do the impossible thing for there to be a transition, a change? Because that's what's going to be able to take us further. We have to change our health, our sense of fitness, our sense of organizations and their responsibilities, and that sense of act of service. Is it to a certain small set, or is it to all? So, again, I wish I could say that there was more specific things that were going to be coming in this 2020. But again, this is about the overall energy for the year. And that energy is saying change must happen. A sense of death must happen. More so than what we have already seen, for us and the world to live on. So I will bid you this as we begin the new year of 2022. I will be speaking at an event in February called Between the Veils in San Jose, California. So if you are able to or interested, consider coming. And I am continuing with my podcast on mental health issues over at Voice of America Network, looking for the Untangling Knots podcast, Minds and Souls Untethered. So, on behalf of the ancestors and the rest of the spirits, be well. May you may your New Year's be happy, and focus on what is impossible to change, because that is what the task is before you, to change the impossible.